step into the shadows.
Echoes of the Drain by N.A. Crossley, Chapter 1. Rain hammered the forest canopy above as 4 young women, Carrie, Jess, Morgan, and Eliza, scrambled down the muddy incline, their headlamps barely cutting through the sheets of water. Their weekend camping trip had been washed out by a sudden storm, and Jess had spotted the opening of an old storm drain beneath a rise of earth and roots. "It's dry in here," Eliza said, her voice echoing against the curved concrete walls. "Creepy, but dry." They huddled inside, their breath clouding in the cold, damp air. Jess lit the camping lantern, casting a warm pool of light as they settled on their backpacks. The tunnel was wide enough to stand in, the floor cracked with weeds and faint trickles of runoff. Somewhere above, thunder grumbled like a restless god. "I remember that one trip to Crater Lake," Morgan said, brushing her wet hair back. "We thought raccoons were trying to get in the tent. Turned out it was Jess snoring." The group burst into laughter. It was easy in that moment to forget where they were, hiding from a storm in a relic of old infrastructure miles from anyone. But then came the noise. A faint scraping sound like metal dragged across concrete from deeper in the tunnel system. They froze. "You hear that?" Carrie whispered. Another clink, louder, closer. "It's probably runoff hitting an old pipe or something," Morgan offered, but her voice lacked conviction. They looked at each other. Then Jess stood, gripping her flashlight. "Let's just check. Could be an animal stuck or something." Carrie sighed but followed, and the others fell in line behind her. The main tunnel curved gently left, but up ahead a narrower offshoot veered into darkness. The sound had come from there. They turned into it, flashlights slicing through the black. The side tunnel soon opened into a cavern, huge, unexpected, like the inside of a cathedral hidden beneath the earth. Massive boulders lined a natural path through the stone, as if nature itself had paved a walkway. "Whoa," Eliza breathed. "This wasn't on any map." As they walked further in, they saw another passage split off to the left. But what caught their attention lay ahead. Another wide clearing, where the tunnel ceiling arched high above, lost in shadow. In the center of that space was a platform. A camera on a tripod faced it. Dim floor lights cast faint golden circles on the ground, illuminating a shape on the platform. A man. He was chained, lying face down, barely moving. One of the chains shifted with a soft clink. Carrie took a step back. "Come on," she said softly. "I think we'd better leave now." Then Eliza gasped and pointed. On the far side of the cavern, high up on a stone ledge that wound along the wall, figures in white robes emerged from another tunnel. They moved slowly, deliberately, like part of some silent procession. There were at least a dozen of them, faces hidden under hoods. "They're coming this way," Jess whispered, panic tightening her voice. "No time to go back the way we came," Carrie said quickly. "That side chute we passed? Let's go. Now." They ran, flashlights flicking wildly as they doubled back to the side path, darting between the boulders. The tunnel walls seemed to press closer, the weight of the mountain above them heavy and ancient. They slipped into the alternate passage and ducked behind a large outcropping of rock in a corner of the next chamber. From there, they could see the central intersection of the cavern where the robed figures were now pausing, turning slightly, as though sensing something. Carrie pressed her back against the cold stone and whispered, "No one move. Don't breathe." The flickering floor lights cast eerie shadows as the procession passed by. There was no chanting, no talking, just the whisper of robes brushing stone. Then a sudden voice, male, pained and hoarse, called out from the plateau. The group froze. Eliza's breath hitched, but she clamped a hand over her mouth. The others stared, wide-eyed, barely daring to blink. From the procession, one of the robed figures peeled away. It turned, not toward the platform, toward them. The figure stepped down from the raised path on the far side and walked with eerie certainty, straight across the cavern toward the very passage where the women were hiding. Its steps were slow, methodical, as though it knew. Jess's hand gripped Carrie's wrist like a vice. The robed figure reached the edge of the side tunnel, stopped, and stared directly into the gloom where they crouched. Though its face was shrouded, they felt its gaze like a knife in the dark. Then, without warning, it lifted both hands and pulled back its hood. Carrie gasped. It was Jess. Jess, standing beside them, froze in place. The woman beside them who had run, whispered, and breathed the same fear, was now staring at her own face. But the other Jess was wrong. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, eyes black as voids. Her lips curled into a slow, unnatural smile that didn't reach those hollow eyes. Morgan scrambled back in terror. Eliza let out a stifled sob. The robed doppelganger tilted its head to the side, mimicking Jess's own shocked expression. Then it screamed, a long, shrill, unnatural sound that echoed through the cavern like tearing metal. Lights in the clearing behind it flared. Footsteps. The rest of the procession had stopped. They were turning. Coming. "Run!" Carrie shouted, grabbing Jess's arm. They sprinted back down the tunnel, hearts slamming in their chests, as they gave Jess's double a wide berth. Then the sound of bare feet slapping on stone came from behind them. They didn't look back, not when another shriek sounded, not when chains rattled again from the platform, not even when the sound of many voices began to rise in a strange, high-pitched chant. They burst into the original storm drain tunnel, slipping on the wet concrete, hands scraping the walls as they clawed their way toward the light of the entrance. Rain had returned. The forest was still and gray. They didn't stop running until they reached the tree line, breathless, soaked, and shaking. When they finally dared to speak, Jess was the first to break the silence. Her voice trembled. "That wasn't me." Carrie, pale and shivering, said only, "We should never have gone down there." Behind them, far back in the storm drain, something scraped, a low, distant sound, like chains, being dragged closer. They stumbled through the forest like ghosts, wet and hollow-eyed, until they found the clearing where their tent still stood, sagging under the weight of rain, its fabric mottled with mud. They didn't speak as they crawled inside, all four of them squeezing into the largest tent. The air inside was musty, smelling of nylon and wet earth, but it was enclosed, safe, or at least removed. The storm outside had dulled to a steady whisper of rain. Inside, they sat cross-legged in silence, their soaked clothes clinging to cold skin. "I need to understand what we saw," Eliza said finally, pulling the sleeping bag around her shoulders. Her voice was small, almost childlike. "We all saw it," Carrie whispered. "That thing, that copy of Jess." Morgan nodded, staring at the tent wall as it shivered with wind. "There was no chanting. No speaking, but they knew we were there." Jess hadn't said anything. She sat still, her hand trembling slightly as she wiped rainwater or maybe tears from her cheek. There has to be some explanation, some kind of gas or mold, like a hallucinogen. It was underground, old. Maybe there was something in the air. "No," Carrie said flatly. "You don't dream up someone who looks exactly like you and screams like that." They fell into silence again. Outside, the wind rose, and the forest creaked like bones shifting. Eventually, their exhaustion overcame fear. One by one, they drifted into uneasy sleep, huddled close, breathing in shallow rhythm. The lantern glowed low in the center of the tent, its light flickering like a dying firefly. Then came the sound. Zip! Jess's eyes flew open. The tent zipper was moving, slowly, a steady pull from bottom to top. They hadn't touched it. "Guys," she whispered, heart hammering, "wake up." The others stirred as the zipper reached the halfway point. "What the hell?" Morgan started, but then the lantern light went out. Gone. Total blackness. For a breathless second, there was nothing but the sound of rain. Then a hand, cold and pale, slid into the tent. Someone screamed. The tent buckled inward, collapsing partially as if something heavy had leaned onto it. Another hand groped inside, long fingers, wrong joints, wrong angles. The women scrambled, kicked, clawed for the other exit flap. Eliza sobbed. Carrie punched at the wall. Jess's fingers found the other zipper and tore it open. They spilled out into the night, crashing into the mud, scattering into the trees. Behind them, the tent stood half open, gently swaying. Empty. No one followed. No footprints but their own in the wet earth.
Subscribe for more nightmares.